All right, it's my pleasure to bring this meeting to order. Connor Jarvis, please invocate for us, sir.
Yes, I will invocate away, and the theme of this invocation is just a prayer for leaders, or a blessing upon leaders. And I thought it was perfect, both, one for Dr. Rob as he continues in his leadership of our club as a past president, and it is his roles in the workplace. But then, of course, as we welcome our friend Steve Buie as new president of our club today. So I know it's an exciting moment. So if you just bow your heads with me, I did not create this myself, but it's a poetic prayer of blessing upon leaders that I wanted to share and thought was particularly fitting. So I'll begin. May you have the grace and wisdom to act kindly, learning to distinguish between what is personal and what is not. May you be hospitable to criticism. May you never put yourself at the center of things. May you act not from arrogance, but out of service, and service above self, we all could say in Rotary here. May you work on yourself, building up and refining the ways of your mind. May you learn to cultivate the art of presence in order to engage with those who meet you. When someone fails or disappoints you, may the graciousness with which you engage be their stairway to renewal and refinement. May you treasure the gifts of the mind through reading and creative thinking, so that you continue to be a servant of the frontier, where the new will draw its enrichment from the old, and you never become a functionary. May you know the wisdom of deep listening, the healing of wholesome words, the encouragement of the appreciative gaze, the decorum of held dignity, the springtime of the bleak question. May you have a mind that loves frontiers, so that you can evoke the bright fields that lie beyond the view of the regular eye. May you have good friends to mirror your blind spots, and may leadership be for you a true adventure of growth. So in the Bible, the 1 Timothy 2:1-2 instructs us to, and really urges all of us that we submit our requests, prayers, intercessions, and thanksgiving for everyone, and for kings, for all those in authority, that we may live peacefully and quiet lives in all godliness and holiness. So just wanted to pray that prayer of blessing upon Steve and of course, Dr. Rob, and the incredible job he's done for our club. So excited for this new year. Thank you both. Amen.
Thank you, Connor. And now we will have the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Cheryl, did you rebuild the four-way test slide? All right, the four-way test of the things we think, say, and do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned?
I'm getting your dad food.
Oh, you go eat. It's fine. I'm gonna give you a quarter.
All right, so welcome, David Hall. You're our guest greeter. I believe we have some distinguished guests with us.
We do. We have quite a number of guests. And so I think I'll get started here with Kemp Boyd. Kemp, would you like to wave and say hello?
Hello, everyone.
Welcome.
Welcome. And Larry, forgive me on the last name, Vuleman? Larry, is Larry still on? There.
He is. He's not. He's muted.
Hello.
Oh, there.
Hello.
There we go. All right.
Thank you.
Welcome, Larry.
Thank you for your welcome.
We also have Alma. Is it Kira de Blasio?
Cria de Blasio. Hello,
Cria de
I'm
Blasio.
from North High School. Hi.
Very good, Alma. Very good. Welcome. Wendy Coy. Wendy, where are
Greetings.
you?
Very glad
There
to
we
be here on this wonderful occasion.
Thank you. Welcome. We have Michael Irby. Michael, where are you?
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here this afternoon.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome. Then we have our First Lady, Sharon Buie. Sharon, welcome to you. And then the last guests here, I see we have a group of three, and I know one of the names, two of the names, I should say. The most important here is Calvin Thomas. Buie is Steve's grandson. And I see Amanda Buie is mom holding Calvin there. And forgive me, I don't know Dad's name.
No, it's all right. I'm just his son. I'm unimportant. James Cornelius Buie III, named after his father, James II.
Very good. Welcome. And I think that's it, unless I'm missing somebody or someone's with one of our Rotarians and not on camera. Anybody else that I missed?
All right. Well, thank you, David.
Oh, I just see Andrew has popped on. Andrew Buie has joined us. Welcome, Andrew. Anybody else? I think that's it, Dr. Rupp.
All right. Very good. Thank you, David. Are there any Rotary ambassadors? Anybody who's been to another club or to a Rotary function outside of Akron Rotary that you'd like to share? I'm not seeing any hands. So that's good. We'll give lots of time for President Buie to tell us his story. As far as announcements, Steve did mention to me that he's starting a new tradition and he'd like me to get it started this time, that he's going to share a new concept that starts every meeting with "What's up, Akron?" And I understand, Colleen, you've been voluntold to share a story that involves Akron. Colleen, I think I saw you on the screen.
Yep. Okay. I'm a little nervous, so everyone, please forgive me if I speak fast. I'm happy to add this information to the chat if I go too fast. So I'm going to share a little bit of in What's Up Akron about events that are happening this weekend. If those are comfortable getting back into the swing of things and getting out to events. So this Thursday at the Akron Art Museum kicks off their Downtown at Dusk concert series. It is outdoors, and the opening concert is the Curtis Taylor Quartet, and Curtis is an award-winning trumpeter. That concert at the Akron Art Museum kicks off this Thursday at 6:30 and goes until 8. On Friday, Rock the Lock welcomes a Styx tribute band with Charita Franks. The gates open at 6. The opening act starts at 7, and the headliner starts at 8:30. Also on Friday, if you're in the area of Hartville, at 5 o'clock until 10 o'clock in Hartville Flea Market, they have a flea market, they have an indoor shop open, and they also have a food truck fair. And then on Saturday, you can head back down to downtown Akron, where they have Rock the Lock welcoming the Drifters. The Drifters are a true music legend with hits that include Under the Boardwalk, Save the Last Dance for Me, Up on the Roof, and That Magic Moment. Gates open at 6 on Saturday. The opener is also at 7, and the headliner is at 8:30 in downtown at Rock the Lock. Also want to mention, all of those events are free to attend. And next Thursday, on July 15th, if you're into yoga, for between 20 and 30 bucks, you can participate in Elevate Akron. It's a very large outdoor yoga festival at Lock 3. And last but not least, President Buie, thanks to Laura Smiley, was given 20 extra concert tickets for Romantic Brahms at Blossom Music Center on Sunday, August 22nd. So President Buie currently has 20 extra tickets for the Romantic Brahms concert on Sunday, August 22nd. If you're interested in that concert on August 22nd, just reach out to President Buie and he will let you know how many tickets he has left. I will add this information to the chat for anyone who I spoke too fast for. That's What's Up Akron.
Excellent job, Colleen. This is a great add to the club, and you did it with a lot of poise. I'm impressed. No nervousness at all. Are there any other announcements? Stu, do you have any? But did I see Stu on here?
You do. I am here, and I am looking for people to go see the Indians. I know they're not the best team, but we're going to have a fun night with End Polio now when we march on the field. And we're in the Terrace Club. Everybody gets a T-shirt, and the flyer is on the Acrotarian, our website, the district website. It looks like this, and I need you to fill that out and get it back to me as soon as you can so we have an idea how many people we're going to have. So I hope that covers it. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Stu. Anybody else? have an announcement. All right, we will move to the most important part of the day. We're going to forego happy dollars today because I want to make sure our new president has ample time to talk to us. So Steve has asked me to perform his induction, and I asked for a bio, and in Steve's usual humble manner, he really doesn't have that. But I did a little digging, and Steve needs no introduction to this team, but I do understand that you met him when he spoke to us about his success for us, for our kids. He's the owner and director of the Akron Learning Treatment Brain Training Center, a nonprofit that works with schools to equip school-age children with strong foundational cognition learning skills. And he's currently involved in a 10-student pilot with the I Promise School. Steve received his Bachelor of Arts in Science as a history major, and not surprisingly was cross-country runner and, not shocking, team captain. I had the opportunity to first really meet Steve along with his bride Sharon and his son Andrew when we made meatloaf. Steve taught me a quick recipe for meatloaf at the Ronald McDonald House, where he and his family volunteer regularly. Steve's had quite an international service, and I couldn't find a lot of details on the web. Sharon, I almost called you, but I thought this is more for Steve to tell us his story. But I do know that he's had multiple times where he's lived abroad, and he speaks Russian in addition to English. So it's been fun getting to know Steve. I really only knew Steve from afar, but now that he's been my wingman for better part of a year, and we've broken bread and some other beverages from time to time, I learned that not only do we share our brides with the same first name, Sharon, we also share a Scottish heritage, although fortunately for you, neither one of us have a kilt in the current state, but we might make some arrangements for him when I'm already planning your roast, Steve. So you better hit it high. In addition, he's a long distance runner, or was a long distance runner, as was I. And as he'll learn, and many of you already know, this is a marathon, not a sprint. So hopefully pace will be one of his virtues this year as he brings our club into a reawakening. Steve has really become a very, very close friend, and that's one of the beauties of Akron Rotary. Good thing is we've got a nice sizable club that we can get a lot done with a lot of people. The challenge is you don't necessarily know everybody. So I think Steve will give us a sneak preview of ways that he may get us to expand our circles. And I really look forward to that. At this point, Steve, can you highlight Steve, Cheryl? Steve Buie, you have been selected by the members of this Rotary Club to guide its affairs during the coming year. You have been entrusted with an important responsibility that will help shape our club's future. Incoming President Buie, you have been elected to the office of the President of the Rotary Club of Akron by its members. It is an expression of their ultimate confidence in your leadership. Please repeat after me. I, Steve Buie, do solemnly swear.
I, Steve Buie, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the Rotary Club of Akron.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President for Akron Rotary Club.
And that I will, to the best of my ability.
And I will, to the best of my ability.
Give support and assistance to the District Governor and to Rotary International.
Give support and assistance to the District Governor and to Rotary International.
And that I will uphold the Constitution and bylaws of this club.
And that I will uphold the Constitution and bylaws of this club.
I do hereby declare you are the President of the Rotary Club of Akron. President Buie gave me the privilege to also induct his board of directors and the other club officers. And this includes folks you know well, President-elect Farkas, Vice President Knauer, Secretary Dalton, Treasurer Gladys, Sergeant of Arms Hall, and our directors include Karen Herdlicka, Nicole Major, Thane Billow, Katie Miller, Tamara Mora, Jacinto Nunez, Gina K. Maddox, Doug Cole, Katarina Pappas, Laura Smiley, and Michael Scherer. Those of I just named, you have been elected to the important positions in the administration of the Rotary Club of Akron. This is everyone's club, and you are the leaders everyone wants to have representing them. This is an indication of your fellow Rotarians' esteem and confidence in each of you. We also believe you will uphold the high traditions of our club, and you will give the best of your executive ability to the furtherance of the interest of our club and carrying forward the objects of Rotary. Now I ask all of you to reply together, so you may unmute. Will you fulfill the responsibilities of your offices to the best of your ability in accordance with the Constitution and bylaws of this club? The response is, we will.
We will.
We will.
I hereby declare the new officers and directors installed. To the outgoing officers and directors, David Miller, Connor Jarvis, June Ring, and Julie Brandel. Though you're retiring from the administration of your club, at least for now, your continued involvement in the club is extremely important and highly encouraged. Thank you all for serving. I assure you, Rotarians, Akron Rotary is in excellent hands. And I now give President Buie the virtual handoff of the gavel. President Buie, please address your club.
Rob, thank you so much. And I just want to say a big hello to everyone. So many of my dear friends have joined in, and glad to have you here today. And of course, really thrilled to show off our new grandson, Mr. Calvin Thomas, who is coming up on 2 months old. And so, Rob, I know that when CJ was born about 4 months ago, you were to the moon with that. And so you had to lead the way, but I had to follow right on your shoulder there with Calvin coming along. So it's wonderful to see my wife and to have my sons here, my daughter-in-law. And this is just a true honor for me to be able to participate in leading this wonderful club over this next year. And quite honestly, I must say, I'm humbled, and I don't take this responsibility very lightly. Let me start by saying, I love Akron, and I think you all do as well. The past 2 years, because I knew that this was coming, I've spent a lot of time building relationships both in the club and throughout the city. And so today, as I share with you, I have entitled my message, Journeying Ahead, the Story. So as we emerge up and out of COVID into this brave, new, crazy world, one thing's for sure, change is going to be a constant in our world. Every story has a beginning, and today I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit of my story, then talking about our story as a club, and lastly, the story, which is all about our beloved Akron and the year ahead. As I begin, I just want to return to the day when I first joined Rotary back in November of 2014. And as you know, when a new member is inducted, we're invited to be able to share a few thoughts. And that day I spoke briefly about myself, but then I made reference to Stephen Covey's classic book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And there's so many good things in that book, but in particular, one of the things that Mr. Covey highlights is the 3 stages of growing up to maturity in life. He mentioned the first stage as dependence, the second stage as independence, and then the very third stage as interdependence. And today, I'm going to borrow those 3 stages of maturity, and I'm going to link them to my story, our story, and then the story. So when it comes to a story, each one of us, we're all part of something that is so much bigger than us. And the big story is called life. For me, that all began on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, 1955, when I was born in Akron, Ohio. But the true story for the Buies in this country began in 1739, when, as Rob mentioned, with our Scottish roots, my forefathers moved from the Isle of Jura, which is part of the Hebrides off of the western coast of Scotland, and they came and they settled in a little place known as Buies Creek, North Carolina. And I'm not making that up. Buies Creek is actually a stone's throw away from Fayetteville. It's still there to this day, and there's a college there known as Campbell College. My grandparents first came to Ohio from Kentucky and Tennessee. And they came in the early 20s, and they both sets of grandparents, my grandfathers, were involved in the rubber industry. Like my grandfather, Buie, worked at Firestone and lived a short distance away, while my mom's dad, my grandfather Sims, worked at Goodrich and literally walked like 3.5 miles to and from every single day. My father, as my firstborn son shared, James Cornelius Buie Jr., and it skipped a generation with me when we decided to then name our first son after my dad. My father was born in 1929, and he became a police officer in the city of Akron as a young man and served for 38 years. And Dad was a tremendous police officer. And for the last 22 years of his service, he was actually in charge of community relations. And by the way, he was the first director of community relations. And he loved his work, and he did it well and touched a lot of people's lives. My mother, June Sims Buie, she also was born in 1929. And what was unique about my mother, and my wife, she nailed this perfectly. She said, "Stephen, your mother collected people." And honestly, that's a very good description of who she was. If you met her, the first time you met her, she would reach out, make that relationship. But I can guarantee the next time that you saw her, you were not going to get out of her presence without being kissed and hugged. And so I had a name for her. I called her the Kiss Factory. I went to Garfield High School, and I graduated back in 1973. And as Rob said, yes, I was into running. I was captain of the cross-country team, and actually still to this day hold a record in my school. I had the 2-mile best time record, and actually it wasn't too bad. It was slightly under 10 minutes. I ran it in 9 minutes and 48 seconds. And then about 15 years after I graduated, they no longer ran the 2-mile. Otherwise, I think that record would have been broken. I graduated from college in 1979. I took the long way from 73 to 79. I started in Akron. Then I finished at a college known as Liberty down in Virginia, and came back and worked at the University of Akron for a short period of time before I moved to Connecticut. And I took a job up there with a company known as Service Master, and I was working in hospital management. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed New Haven, Connecticut. And if you've ever been, by the way, just a little side note, New Haven is recognized as the pizza capital of the United States. And as my wife would tell you, New Haven, and Wendy Coy, who's on for this Zoom meeting, would tell you there is incredible pizza in New Haven. But I moved in 1980, met my wife in 1983, and in a short 11 months, we were married on September 14th of 1984. And actually, this old guy was 29 at the time, and I was dragging my feet, and I should have been married sooner. But I pushed through my fear, made the best decision of my life, and it's reaped some incredible benefits. 2 wonderful sons. Number 1, who was showing off, that beautiful grandson, James Cornelius Buie III, was born March the 14th of 1989. And people ask me, they said, well, what was it like to become a father? And honestly, it was like Christmas. And it was the same thing when Andrew was born 12 years later. But anyhow, in June of 1995, the Buie family was in a time of significant transition, and we were trying to figure out what was next in our lives. We'd been very involved up there in the community, and we knew we were shifting, but we were trying to figure out where we to stay in Connecticut, were we to come back to Ohio, where I was born and raised, or were we to do something entirely radical and different? And we pondered, we prayed, we talked, we looked, and we decided on door number 3, which was the radical door. And we went to live in the country of Ukraine. And we lived in northeastern Ukraine in a city known as Kharkov, Kharkov, that has a population of 2 million people. And we got in there and got involved with an inner city church that had only been in existence for about, I want to say maybe a year and a half. And got involved with running some house groups and teaching people how to survive and how to live in a post-communist world. And it was really the time of our lives. But honestly, I would say it was also quite difficult in that they had the worst winter that they'd had in 50 years. So we threw all that we had into it, built some great relationships, learned how to speak Russian, and then decided that we needed to come back. And we needed to come back because for a couple of reasons. We needed to bring our son back and to help him get involved with baseball, Little League, and just building his own little life. And so we did that, but we came back with a purpose because our hearts have been so deeply touched by the Ukrainian people that we recognized that had we stayed there, let's say we lived there for the rest of our days, we would have only been able to make a certain amount of impact. And so we decided we were to go back and gather others. And we did that. We came back, we sold our home in Connecticut, and then we moved back to Akron, where this guy is born and raised. It was a little bit of a culture shock for my wife coming from the Northeast to come to the Midwest and losing all that good Italian food, but I must give her kudos that she's adapted, and she's adapted well. So we got pretty quickly involved back in Akron. I was selling long-term care health insurance and did very, very well in that. And we got involved in a church in West Akron, and very shortly began to take teams of people back to Ukraine. And over the course of 10 years' time, we took over 120 people, and many of those folks went on numerous trips. But what was really kind of cool about that is we were able to impart and build some sustainable aspects of wholeness, as it were, in that group of people. And one of them in particular was that we were able to build an economic development program. And that part of what we did was put together by Jeremy Lyle, who is now the current director of Heart to Heart Ministries in Akron. It was his father, and John Lyle and another gentleman, Ken Lutke, did an awesome job of putting together micro loans for the Ukrainians so that they could teach them how to break the cycle of poverty one family at a time. And that worked incredibly well. Additionally, we saw the needs that were going on as far as the hospitals and the medical system. So we linked up with the Children's Infectious Disease Hospital. We took a number of pieces of equipment, ultrasound machines, supplies, medicine, uniforms, and even brought a couple of their surgeons here for some training. Additionally, we were able to participate in the establishment of a crisis pregnancy center, the first of its kind in that part of the country. And since that day, we've seen over 350 babies that have been born. But furthermore, that one crisis pregnancy center multiplied to where they have like 6 or 8 different other ones throughout other parts of the Soviet Union. So that was exceptionally fruitful, and really was something of what we still value as a very, very deep joy in our hearts and in our lives. We continue to stay in touch with Ukraine. We were speaking with them on Sunday, and all in Russian. And so the good news is they now over there are carrying the ball, and they're sustaining and taking things further. And such a joy. We called what transpired a bridge of love, because it was all about relationships, our people going there and their people coming here. And what a tremendous experience. In 2006, we moved, we had another move. We moved to Wilmington, North Carolina, where we could be near Sharon's mom and dad. And Sharon also ended up working as a commercial real estate appraiser down there with a very successful firm. And I continued in working with my long-term care health insurance. But that little 6-year hiatus is what it turned out to be, was a good time for us, and a time for us to be able to bridge and link also with her family. Then in 2012, it came time to come back to Akron. And what precipitated that was that my parents, Jim and June, were beginning to get up in years, and my dear mother had contracted with Alzheimer's. And I want to tell you that Alzheimer's, as someone has said, is the great eraser. And I think that's a pretty apt description, because to have witnessed someone who was so outgoing and so much fun and so friendly, and to see her diminish was really hard. But I had the privilege, and we had the privilege, of taking them into our home for a year, which was hard, but priceless. And then they ended up in assisted living because we could no longer handle the depth of their needs. But mom and dad had a good finish to life. Dad lived to be just a couple months shy of 89. My mother was 1 month shy of 87, and they were married for 66 years. And so it was a real joy. It really was, to have that privilege to serve them. And in coming back to Akron, I actually ended up in buying a company, and Rob made mention of it, Learningrx. And Learningrx is a business that focuses on helping children who struggle with learning. And what we do is we train them in the necessary, crucial foundational skills of how to learn. Because quite honestly, if you don't know how to learn, it really doesn't matter what you're trying to learn. It's just going to be very, very hard to learn. And so as a result of that, that was a help to our family because our youngest struggled a little bit. And once he went through that training, it really changed his world and changed ours. But I never in my wildest dream did I figure on being asked about buying that business as his training was coming to an end. And that was something that I told the previous owner. I said, let me talk with my wife and let me pray about this because that's a pretty big decision. And on both counts, the answer was yes. And so in 2014, I took over ownership of Learningrx, and then shortly thereafter, ended up starting a 501c3 that Mark Crone helped me establish, and that's what I made the presentation on a few months ago, was success for our kids and how the doors open up for us to be able to be doing a pilot program now at the I Promise School. And let me say this, because I believe this with all that I am. If this does what we know it can and will do, I think there's a very good chance that this could be implemented throughout the I Promise School, and then without too much trouble, springboard into the public schools. And then from there to see wherever it goes. But I count myself exceptionally privileged and honored because when we start speaking of schools where you could have an opportunity to do something of this nature, I don't think that there's a better opportunity in the country than what was presented to me with the I Promise School, because there happens to be a certain gentleman from who actually started that school, who grew up in Akron, who has some pretty deep connections, and this could go mainline without too much trouble. What I tell people is it's reality 101, reality 202, and reality 303. There's no smoke and mirrors here. When a kid gets it, they get it. And to watch them take that and then to build off of that and to learn confidently is a real joy. So that's pretty much an overview of my story. But I want to talk now about our story as a club and kind of link this to Mr. Covey's second stage of maturity, which is independence. And, you know, the goal as people of youth is to grow up and to step into some of who we were created to be or who we were called to be. And everybody is different and everybody is unique. And that's wonderful to have the variety of giftings, as it were, and promptings for how you want to spend your life and what you want to do. Now, as that relates to our club, this is a pretty amazing club because we've been around for 107 years. And the Akron Rotary Club story is impressive. And there have been some amazing leaders through the years. One of the components of our meetings going forward this year is that we're going to introduce little 90-second segments, one each week, about a previous president of the club and what was going on in Akron at that time. I've had the time to spend some conversations with Jack Herrig and Vivian. And Jack, as you well know, is exceptionally passionate about our story and how rich the history truly is. We've had the blessing of so many good quality leaders from the Akron Club. We've had, I think, a half a dozen or 7 district governors that have come from this club. And John Reyes just finished this last year as Rob comes to an end of his year as president. But John Reyes was district governor. And within 2 years' time, Julie Brandel will be stepping into that role as well. And some of those past governors, I'm not going to be able to name them all, but Cheryl Warren, who plays such a key role in our meetings week in and week out, Stu Buchanan. We also have, I believe, I think Jack Herrig had been one as well. So we are very, very rich in leadership. And so I count that as a real honor and a real privilege to be able to step into that lineage of what's been going on here. I'd like to take a few minutes now just to acknowledge some folks who have put in a lot of time, in particular over this last year. And when Rob shared last week, he spoke about the challenges of being president the entire time through COVID and having to conduct every single meeting virtually. And part of his theme last week was making lemonade out of lemons. And that's exactly what he did. And don't be kidded to think that there wasn't much going on, because Rob, like a master mechanic, took our club back into the shop and began to take a look at the systems of how we function with our bylaws, and taking a look at the establishment of a risk committee on how do we face down COVID and how do we properly lead and govern the club through this challenging time. And so there were a lot of different committee meetings. There were a lot of different gatherings of coming together and saying, how do we improve who we are and what we are, so that when we begin to emerge up and out of COVID, we're going to be ready to hit the ground running. And so some of these folks, they worked quite tirelessly behind the scenes, but their work was crucial. And you're in the coming months, you're going to see the fruit of that work. I'd like to mention Cheryl Warren once again, Terry Dalton, Michael Gladys, Tamara Mora, Karen Herdlicka, Jacinto Nunez, Chaz Billington and the rest of the risk committee, Sandy Narragon, Carol Martorino Becker, Katie Miller, and I'm sure there's others, and please forgive me if I've forgotten to mention you. But all that to say this, when it comes to service above self, when it comes to volunteers, the club, you guys are amazing. And I'm excited to have the opportunity that we're finally coming up and out of a virtual world. And it looks like come August, we're going to be able to gather back in person in meetings once again. And in the next couple of days, you're going to be receiving a letter in the email describing some of that handiwork that's been going on behind the scenes and what we put together as we step back into being with one another. Having shared about some of these dear folk that have been busy, I wanted to take a couple minutes and I wanted to talk just briefly about some of the special relationships that I've been blessed with in the 6.5 years I've been in the club. And I know most of you also have special relationships, but I want to just take a couple seconds to talk briefly about them, because these people have been very, very dear to me and quite encouraging. Let me start by posthumously mentioning Graham Renke, who passed away about 3 years ago. And when I was first starting my 501c3, I reached out to Graham and asked him if he would help me and if he would assist me. And he said gladly. And he rolled up his sleeves and got in there, and with Mark Crone's help, was able to help me piece some things together in the beginning. And what a great guy. I mean, you talk about a classy individual. Graham Renke was the personification of Rotary, and he did it with a spirit of excellence. I also want to thank our invocator today. He's become a dear friend over the last 3.5 years, Mr. Connor Jarvis. And as you probably can tell, this guy with so many of our capable young leadership is a president in the making somewhere down the road, but he's building his business, building his family, and he and Courtney have a beautiful daughter in Emerson, but Connor has become a very, very dear friend, and deeply appreciate him. Additionally, Tom Knauer. Tom Knauer is kind of a quiet guy at times, but I tell you, underneath that quietness, as you get to know him, there's nothing but solid gold. And Tom's a neighbor. He and Missy live about 3/4 of a mile away. We've been able to get together at least once here, but Tom and I on various occasions have had time to share, and he's been a real encouragement to me. Jenny Wino, our dear Jenny Wino, is 91 years young. And I didn't know it, but when we started back to church, we started to St. Paul's Episcopal Church, and Jenny Wino has been a member there for probably 50 plus years. And so in the process of seeing her at church and getting to see her at our Rotary meetings, we struck up a friendship. She had us over for dinner a couple times. We've had her here for dinner as well with her boyfriend, Frank Harvey, who is a young 90. But anyhow, what I love about Jenny is Jenny has an overcoming spirit, and she is so incredibly young at heart. And so thank you, Jenny. You're a real blessing to us. Moving on, Mr. John Margita. I've got a nickname for John, and as he and I came in somewhat near the same time period, I call John George Hallis. And if you know anything about football and you're old enough like guys like Rob and me, George Hallis was an icon along with Vince Lombardi when the NFL was getting going. And the reason I gave John that name, that's my name for him, is because when he brought us together a couple years ago for a strategic plan, there was no nonsense about recognizing that this great wealth that we have as a people needed to be loved. That love needed to be shared throughout the city. And so John got us going with Carol Martirano Becker and put together the strategic plan, which Dr. Rob this last year put a lot of effort into putting some real legs to that. And so you're gonna see us begin to step into the reality of all of that hard work. But thank you, John. And John also has become a very close personal friend. And I love you, buddy. That's all I can say. That leads me to Miss Gina Kay. Miss Gina Kay Maddox, who is heading up our diversity and inclusion team. And I got to know Gina Kay at one of the roundtables we had during one of our meetings about 3 years ago. And I really didn't know her, but come to find out that Miss Gina Kay was a past president. I think she said 2006 or 2007. But, you know, that's awesome, because as a Black woman stepping into the role of president in a predominantly white club, she jumped a couple of hurdles in order to step into that position and to lead well. But what I love about Gina Kay is that her wheels are always spinning on how can we make a difference? How can we touch more people? How can we include more people? How can we spread the love? So I look forward, because we're going to be exploring more of that as we journey on this year. Lastly, and clearly not least, is Rob McGregor. And Rob and I spoke this morning for about 40 minutes, and we were just going over some of the details of today's meeting. And I said to Rob, I'm so thankful that during the time of COVID, during the time where we were confined to virtual meetings, that you were at the helm. And And you know that, Rotarians, there could not have been anybody possibly more equipped and more prepared and better versed at leading us through this challenging time. And Rob did that, and we were blessed to receive the fruit of his leadership. And as a result, again, we're prepared now for journeying ahead into the story. And as my dear friend there, Stephen Covey, says in his book, and on the continuum of maturity, the last stage in going from dependence to independence is on to interdependence. And interdependence is where we're going, people. And I know it's in your hearts. I know it's in your lives because I've witnessed it. I witness continually, not just the impact that you make here in Rotary, but the impact that you make in your specific circles of influence. And on today's call, we've got some amazing people who love this city. And the story is Akron. And I love Akron. And you know what? I know you love Akron too. So, and isn't it interesting? Today, Kemp Boyd is on. Kemp Boyd is leading an organization called Love Akron. My high school friend, Michael Irby, provides leadership for 100 Black men, which is all about leadership, all about helping the generations that are to come. And Larry Volleman, who happened to be a neighbor when we were growing up in Firestone Park, his house and my house, literally our backyards adjoin one another. And the Vollemans were the salt of the earth. And I'm not making that up. His mother, an incredible saint, and truly worked with Sister Ignatia, who of Alcoholics Anonymous fame. And then Larry's dad was a very successful attorney, and Larry just happened to follow in his dad's steps. But Larry and Father Norm put together Heart to Heart, which is a bringing together of the workplace and faith. And as a result, that organization continues to touch thousands of lives in the greater Akron area. So as I come to an end here, I want to share just briefly with you my vision for the coming year. It focuses on 3 points. Number one, and it's back to the strategic plan, has to do with diversity and inclusion. Now, here are the realities of our beautiful Akron, Ohio. 60% of Akron is white, 30% of Akron is Black, 5% of Akron is Asian, and the other 5% is of mixed races. And as we move forward, we need to interface with that, and we need to be proactively going after greater diversification. And that's front and center on my heart, because if you consider this, that if 30% of Akron is Black, and you take a look at the incredible wealth of Black leadership we have in this city, then every decision-making table needs to have a representation of this part of who we are. And the same holds true of bringing in people from the Asian community, because we've got over 25,000 immigrants in North Hill. And my dear friend, Alma de Blasio from North High School, she's an amazing individual. And that's true. And as you get to know her, you'll find out. But she loves those kids. She loves their families. And she's continually thinking of how can she help impact them. And I'm glad to say that Brian Kima is going to be stepping in, and I'm vacating out of the role that I had with Interact, but Brian Kima is going to be stepping in and working with her and carrying the ball further down the field and touching more lives. So diversity and inclusion is front and center of what I'm wanting to see happen in this next year. And then secondly, service, 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 service. And we are a service organization. And as was mentioned earlier, service above self. And you know what? We just had a project, I think 3 weeks ago over in Middlebury, where we helped to beautify 7 different homes. And we had 15 Rotarians that turned out, and we had a heck of a lot of fun. And here's what's interesting about service. It is impossible. It's impossible to serve and to give and not receive more than what you have given. It's impossible. And you know that from experience. So we're coming out and we're going to go into a lot of service. And we're not talking about random service. This is going to be service with a purpose. And we're looking to also build something sustainable in a couple areas where we will be serving. Lastly, we're going to be looking to enhance the relationships that exist in Akron Rotary with the Akron Rotary Club, the Akron Rotary Camp, and the Akron Rotary Foundation. And let me say this, Dr. Rob had initiated some meetings with the camp leadership over the last few months, and those meetings were very, very fruitful. And a couple of months ago, Dan and Mela put together a meeting where all 3 of the legs, as it were, that I just mentioned, the club, the foundation, and the camp, we met and we discussed moving forward. And what was really exciting that came out of this was that the camp is looking to expand the incredible work that they do, which is second to none, with a spirit of excellence, and wanting to make the camp available to help hurting, traumatized children in our city. And there are lots of them, brothers and sisters, that are hurting. But the camp is wanting to work and to see how we can take this to the next level and to touch and bring healing into others, and to expand our reach. So as I close, just a couple things, and then we'll be done here right at 1. But the meetings are going to be a lot of fun. We're going to start introducing some music next week, a couple of songs before we enter in and officially start the meeting. And then, as mentioned, we're going to be sharing a little bit about our storied history, and also what Colleen initiated today for us about What's Up Akron. But I look forward to the year that lies ahead. And in the next couple of months, I've got something too that I'll be sharing with you that I think that you'll be excited about for Christmas, that I think can be just over the top, as it were. But thank you for your support. Thank you, Rob. Thank you to the board. Thank you for all the members, and thank you to my dear family and friends. But if we lock arms, brothers and sisters, and we step into the fullness of interdependence, and not just with Akron Rotary, but it begins with us. And then we take that and with other incredible organizations and people in the city, and we lock arms. I am naive enough to believe this. We can change this city for the better, and we can increase and expand the greater story. So thank you. I appreciate the honor and the opportunity to lead this club for the next year. Dr.
Well done, Steve.
Would you like to close this off?
Yeah, I was just going to say real quick, Steve, appreciate it. I don't see any questions at this time. If you want to stick around, maybe have a little fellowship afterwards, that would be great.
I'd be happy to. I'd be happy to.
And if you run into Morgan Goldwaite or Jim Dorr this next week, wish them happy birthday. So I will do Steve's honors since we couldn't figure out how to translocate the bell. This is Steve's hand now adjourning this meeting. And I will say we are in great hands. Your enthusiasm and the warmth that just exudes from you, Steve, will get us all excited, and we'll run through walls for you, buddy. Best of luck.
Brother.
Well done, Steve. If you look at the chat room, there's a lot of people saying congratulations, excited for the new year. So really looking forward to it.
Phenomenal. Always so well spoken.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you.
Nicely done.
Yes.
Great to see your family. Hi, Sharon.
Yes. Hey,
Looking
everyone.
beautiful as always.
Yeah.
You can unmute, Sharon. There we go. I unmuted you.
There you go.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Great to see you all.
Great to see you, Sharon.
You as well.
I do think it's interesting that, Rob, Steve, and myself all have wives that are Sharon.
Makes it easy for the rest of us.
Oh, it's coincidental too. It's the 3 best looking guys in the club too. So.
That's hilarious.